I'm going to touch on a really sensitive topic at the moment because I think it's deliberately designed to be controversial. And I'm talking about geopolitical Israel. I'm not talking
Hmm.
about spiritual Israel, geopolitical Israel. And I want to preface what I'm saying with the knowledge that statistically, geopolitical Israel is one of the most secular countries in the world. I'm not talking about the faith here of the Jewish people. I'm talking about the nation. Zionism connected with geopolitical Israel. Is that a major player in this as well?
Well, it has to be, doesn't it? And when you look at what is going on in Palestine, particularly since the October 7th attacks, regardless of what really took place or who was responsible there, um, but I mean, the UN itself has described it as genocide. And when you look at the footage of Palestine since then, I mean, it's just I don't even have words to describe it. I mean, it's the most sickening and appalling thing I've ever seen in my life. Um, Now, the point about this, the broader significance that I've argued in my work, is that the West is doing nothing to stop this. In fact, it's completely 100% behind it.
Yeah.
When Rishi Sunak was Prime Minister in the UK, he came out and basically said that we're going to stand with Israel forever. And similar noises were coming out of the United States and elsewhere. And I thought, why on earth would you say something like that? And, talking genocide. Well, the whole idea after 1945 was never again, right? Never again. And then there were all the problems with Western inaction, if not deliberate complicity with the Rwanda genocide in the 1990s. But now it's clearly happening. In fact, it's being live streamed. So, they say it's the first time a genocide has been live streamed from inside because of camera phones and so on. The evidence is there for the whole global population to see. Of course, much of it is censored as far as possible, but for anyone who's willing to look, it's there. And the West is directly implicated in it and doing absolutely nothing to stop it. Meanwhile, you have the various facial recognition technologies, autonomous drones, and so on, digital checkpoints, all being used against the Palestinians. Anthony Levenstein, in his book, describes Palestine as a laboratory, a test site essentially for this new digital weaponry. And what I've argued is that Palestine really is an indicator for what awaits the rest of us if we don't take action and speak up on this topic, because those same digital technologies and digital weapons under a global technocracy will come for all of us. Dissident opinion will not be allowed. And there are various ways of switching people off, all the way from censorship through to autonomous drones and murder. And this, again, has a long history, using information for killing purposes. The systematization of the Holocaust through IBM, the use of information gathering to identify key leaders in the Indonesian coup in 1965 or in Operation Phoenix in 1968, the use of information to identify key terrorist cells in the war on terror, in the same way as kind of marketeers use those kind of spider diagrams to see who the key influencers are. Same principles being used to identify key terrorists. And now the war on terror is effectively coming home to Western populations, and we're all being treated like criminals. Everybody has to provide fingerprints, when they enter a different country. It's getting really bad. Everybody is under suspicion. It's increasingly a zero trust society. And so if you see how all of this fits together, then yeah, what's happening in Palestine should be a massive warning signal for everybody else across the rest of the world. And it is a mystery, is it not, why Benjamin Netanyahu was able to get more standing ovations in the US Senate than Barack Obama was. How does that work? How is it possible for a small Middle Eastern country with a population of 8 million apparently to be able to exercise control over US and British politics. You look at the influence of AIPAC in the United States, and all of the politicians seem to be at its beck and call. If you look at the Conservative Friends of Israel and the Labour Friends of Israel in the UK, you find exactly the same thing. And so somehow, and I'm not 100% sure how this works, perhaps it was through the Promise software that Israel developed in order to gain backdoor access on influential people and potentially bribe and blackmail and so on, the key figures. But somehow this state, which of course, in the 1950s with the Irgun, clear kind of terrorist influences there, appears to have been able to manipulate Western foreign policy to an unfathomable degree. There are those who suspect Israel's role in 9/11. I don't know if that can be demonstrated necessarily from the events on the day, but what we do know is cui bono, who benefits? And US aggression against a series of Muslim majority countries surrounding Israel clearly benefits Israel. And so this is coming more and more to the fore now. And of course, they've been very successful through their weaponization of anti-Semitism. No criticism of Israel or else you're an anti-Semite. Well, thankfully, that narrative is also starting to fall apart now. But I think you're right that, this Israeli state, as you put it, and particularly the Zionist influences within it, really need to be put under the microscope now, because there's something very, very dark coming from there.